Hello. All right, I have 7:01. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Urban?
Here.
Counselor Hein? Here. Counselor Lammerman?
Here.
Counselor Merriday?
Here.
Counselor Settlemeyer?
Here.
Counselor Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Soulsby?
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Tonight we have a presentation from the Urban Forestry Committee.
Well, thank you, City Council and Mayor. It's a privilege to be here and give you our State of the Trees address for the urban forest development here in Cottage Grove. As of now, all 7 seats are filled, with our last vacancy being filled by Tammy Stark. She brings a background in project management, outreach, interest in plant identification, and landscaping and planning. Another goal that we have accomplished was receiving the 31st Tree City of the USA Award. So that was a privilege to be in the honor and accept that. It's a great thing to have recognition from outsiders and be able to speak upon that and, you know, move forward with positive influence back and behind you. Fourth thing I have on my agenda is going to be the another award. It's going to be received from the Growth Award from the Urban Day Foundation. The Growth Award program is used by Arbor Day Foundations to encourage Tree City USA members to go beyond their minimum standards for Tree City in the USA. So we have 2 awards that we were awarded. These speak, you know, great things about our city and what we're trying to do as far as create more development for urban forestry, landscaping, and utilize the spaces for trees that are in our area, in our neighborhoods. The Urban Forest Committee, city and staff members of the community plan some trees in Corner Park. I believe it was last month, I want to say. Councilman Merriday was there. Some other individuals, leaders in the community showed up. So that was a great day for us to plant some trees, get awareness as far as what we're doing and what we're trying to strive for here in the city of Cottage Grove. Those trees are black tulipio. Is that how you pronounce that? Tupelo? Tupelo. So they are black tupelo trees and some surrogate cherry trees. Is that from my understanding? So yeah, we had about 15 attendees show up, and it was a half day. We showed up in the morning with Chris and some other of the members of the committee. And, you know, we just got together and expressed the influence on what we need to do to provide more tree awareness in parks, neighborhoods, and what we can do as a body in the community. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my vice chair, and he will wrap it up with the agenda for the trees address.
Hello there, Council. So I'm just have the last half of our report, and we had over 5 tree reports submitted to our council, which we have given as much sagely advice as possible. Committee had a emergency preparedness booth last year, which turned out to be very successful, and we plan on repeating it this year. Last year we gave out tree rounds to all participants, and that came from the ice storm. And so we were happy to have something good come out of such a devastating event that had such a great impact on our trees. This year, we're also putting forth a focus in gaining, garnering more grants for our city trees. Let me see else. And then we continue our efforts to for the Parks Master Plan and the Urban Forestry Management Plan, and we will focus with a focus on Coiner Park this year. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item B, request to transfer ownership of pallet shelters.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Kate Budd. I'm the Human Services Division Manager with Lane County. And I'm here this evening, having written a letter, simply just requesting the transfer of ownership of 10 of the pallet shelters that have previously served as emergency shelter here in this community. As you may be aware, back in 2022, Lane County had transferred ownership to the city of Cottage Grove of 32 pallet shelters. And those had gone on to be utilized for individuals in a few different ways. But it's my understanding at this point in time, they're not being utilized. And so we had been approached by a few emergency shelter providers in the city of Eugene to see if Cottage Grove might be open to transferring ownership of 10 of the pallet shelters that would be able to be used when transferred to the nonprofit providers for emergency shelter as soon as possible. And so we are just simply here asking for the council to consider this request.
Any questions?
Yes,
Councilor Wilson.
so Kate, but thank you for coming. Were they interested in the small shelters or the larger shelters or just the
Great question. The smaller shelters.
smaller shelters? Okay. And I noticed that the two providers, these are established locations that are currently being used for that purpose, and they're just needing some extra bed space, basically.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Anyone else? Counselor Settlemeyer.
I didn't raise my hand at first because I don't really have a question, but just the idea that it's my understanding we got them to help out with a situation, and similar situations, we're not using them now. And the same people who gave them to us say, hey, here's somebody else that would like to use them. And you're not taking all of them away from us. So it makes a lot of sense to me that, you know, to support what you're asking. It's great to have them use.
Anyone else? And for the audience, we have what you presented, but just for the audience, can you say, state the organizations?
Sure. So 5 to St. Vincent de Paul of Lane County and 5 to Equitable Social Solutions.
And you already have a predetermined place already and set to go in Eugene for them.
They do. They've identified where they would go, and we're happy to help with the transportation of the pallet shelters.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Counselor Merriday.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there an action required from the council to move this forward, or?
Yes, these are city assets and it would require a policy decision by the city council to donate them to another cause.
In that case, I propose that we transfer 10 of the pallet shelters we received from Lane County back to Lane County, that they may distribute them to where they'll be used.
I second.
We have a motion with a second. Any further discussion? Counselor Irvin.
Yeah, I would support this particular request. I would like us as a council to consider the maintenance of the other remaining shelters and preparations for having them as a quick deploy for future natural disasters and events. And I'd like us to seriously consider where we would do that, how we would hook them up, and how they could be stored most effectively so that they're preserved for the longest period of time. I would prefer not to give any more away.
Anyone else? We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Items to be added to the agenda, I see none. Appearance of interested citizens. This is the time for citizen comment. The council will first take comments addressing items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. The council will then take comments addressing action items on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name, identify whether they are a city resident, and if so, their ward. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for public hearing may be provided only during that hearing. The council will not make any decisions based on public comment. However, staff and council may choose to ask questions or comment following the conclusion of citizen comments. Mr. Kelch.
Bruce Kelch, I am not a city resident with 78340 Halderman Road. In the past, I shared some numbers, Oregon by the numbers with the council, and I'd like to remind the council of some other numbers, those coming from the May 24 recall election. Of the 7,500 eligible voters, only 2,700 voted for that recall election. That's 37%. That meant that 63% of eligible Cottage Grove voters did not vote. Low voter turnout allows non-majority groups to determine the results of elections. Only 22% of total voters voted to recall the 3 counselors, not a majority of the voters. Oregon standards for a recall are so low, they've caught the attention of the League of Women Voters. Other states require cause for a recall: misappropriation of funds, illegal activities, egregious conflicts of interest, serious reasons, causes. Oregon standards have been likened to, I don't like you, I disagree with you. Too many good people in our state who want to serve their communities have been recalled not for cause, but for political reasons. Which leads me to the 2 no votes against Alex Dreher serving on the Budget Committee at the last council meeting. I'm a great supporter of Alex. She's intelligent, skilled, experienced, and dedicated to service. To use the fact she was recalled and not allow her to serve on the Budget Committee is disappointing and short-sighted, to say the least. It speaks to Alex's integrity and her character that she continues to want to serve our community. She has skills and experience that exceed most of the council members, and her background is something the city should welcome. We should be looking for as many talented people with many diverse skills as we could to serve on that Budget Committee. I'm confident she will serve the city well in the Budget Committee, and I'm grateful to her that she will be bringing her many gifts to the table. And my thanks to the council members who supported her addition to the Budget Committee.
Thank you. Art Lancaster.
I just got a couple things. I drive by the old hospital on a regular basis. It is very, very run down. The grass is up to 4 feet high in places. There's dry brush in the front where if somebody threw a cigarette in there, that whole place is going to go up. It's disgusting to look at all the neighborhoods that are clean and then you've got a big old pile. It's nasty. And that's enough on that one. The other thing, they were talking about activities last meeting for the city. We have a river run. If we were to clean up the river along the edges so people could enjoy it and get some herb wraps, have a start and a finish for the summertime, and people could enjoy that river and it would be fun. So something to think about. There's a lot of things inside Cottage Grove that would really be enjoyable for public and visitors. That's what I got.
Thank you. Item 6, public hearings. This public hearing is being held to receive public testimony for an ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan to add the 2025 Cottage Grove Economic Opportunities Analysis and amend the economic element. The City Council will make a final decision on the ordinance based on complete record, including the Planning Commission recommendation and testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the City and State of Oregon. This is a Type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria for the city's comprehensive plan and a State of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we ask that you use the sign-up sheet that has been provided. Interested persons will be recognized in the order in which their names appear on the speaker's list. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for the public record. We ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Please remember that all presentations will be timed. You will be informed when your allotted time has expired. I will ask speakers exceeding the time to limit immediately conclude his or her remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to the staff. Written testimony may also be offered and will be considered and made part of the record. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group, with other members of the organization standing to show their support. Each person may testify only once unless called back to the podium at the request of a council member to respond to a question. Before we begin, does any counselor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? I will now open the public hearing at 7:19 p.m. This public hearing will be held for the purpose of taking comments on amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan to add the 2025 Cottage Grove Economic Opportunities Analysis and amend the economic element. May we please have the staff report, Beth? Or is
Thank you very much. I apologize for my voice being terrible today, but at least it's me working. I'm Beth Goodman with Echo Northwest. I've been working with the city for about the last year and a bit on this project with Mike and Lindy most recently. Next slide, please. So you last did an economic opportunities analysis in 2009, which resulted in a small UGB expansion at that point. So some of the key findings about the EOA, which still I think apply to Cottage Grove even now: small town charm, supportive public partnership, medical facilities, maybe that one applies a little less, public facilities and schools. Your challenges were lack of employment, size, and workforce training needs, which is still I think some issues. So going forward, we're doing an economic opportunities analysis to meet the requirements of Goal 9 of Oregon's statewide planning system, which is for economy. So in doing an EOA, what it helps you do is understand the existing conditions to inform your economic development strategy, which this EOA includes a piece of, to inform your land use policy, so how you might zone or rezone land or redesignate land in the future, and then coordination, which is really an important part of economic development. So this gives you a factual basis to work from. It helps you plan for the next 20 years. Next slide, please. Products of this are the economic opportunities analysis document, about the 100-page document that you've got in front of you, that I believe staff is recommending adopt as an appendix to your comprehensive plan. So it's a fact base that you can use in making future comprehensive plan related decisions. And then recommendations for comprehensive plan policy changes and actions to implement those changes. Those actions would not be part of the comprehensive plan. So when we think about what you might be trying to do, an example is another Project Sparrow. So it's the kind of project that an updated EOA is helpful for planning. On the next slide, please. As I mentioned, we started this project in early 2024, and here we are at the end of 2025 May. It's not the end of the year yet, but it is the end of the fiscal year where your grant is due to be completed here in May 2025. So going through this a little bit, I'll start with the buildable lands inventory. I know you all have heard this from me. Oh, thank you. Multiple times. I know I sound pathetic. So I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but if people have questions, I hope you'll stop me. So we start with all land inside the Cottage Grove urban growth boundary that is zoned for commercial or industrial uses. That's the land base. From that, we identify all land that is developed and vacant of various types. And on the next slide, we look at all of the types of constraints that make it difficult to develop. So things like the 100-year floodplain areas where you've got steep slopes or high landslide hazards, et cetera. So even if areas like that have land that is buildable and vacant, it's not considered because of existing constraints. So on the next slide, what we have here is all of your land that's buildable by comprehensive plan designation. You've got about 64 acres within the city limits that are buildable and another 26 in the county. A lot of your buildable land is in industrial, especially inside the city limits, with not too much buildable land in commercial. Before I go on, are there any questions about the buildable lands inventory? Yes, sir.
More of an observation. I think what I gathered from reading your report was that we do have a fair amount of industrial land, but none of it is in large tracts. It's all in itty bitty pieces. And that was one of the impetuses behind the Project Sparrow, was that we could achieve a over 20-acre portion of industrial land. So
that is true. On the next slide. What we're showing you here is the size of your buildable parcels. And what you see is you really don't have any buildable acres that are buildable sites that are larger than 14 acres. And so given the constraints that are around the city currently, I would say you may need to look at opportunities for redevelopment or other opportunities for something else like Project Sparrow in the future to meet your need for larger sites. Are there any other questions?
Councilor Urban?
Just when it's appropriate at some point, a curiosity about, I watched one of your videos recently.
Oh dear.
That is good. About the difference between the housing needs analysis criteria that we would now be under if we revisited versus what we have in place right now. So I'm thinking about that as we discuss strategy, whether it makes sense to do that again, and I'd be interested how this might change if we remake that assessment.
Well, I'll keep it brief, and I'd be happy to talk to you, I think, separately from this, or talk to you all. I'm not sure that you want me to fill your evening with housing needs tonight. So Oregon has a new housing needs analysis system that's not entirely built yet. It's called the Oregon Regional Housing Needs Analysis, the ONA. All cities that are above 10,000 people are required to conduct a housing needs analysis every 8 years if they're outside the metro urban growth boundary. And so Cottage Grove will be coming up on needing to conduct its housing needs analysis soon. That is really different than your last housing needs analysis, which I did. It includes things like looking at development ready lands. So of your vacant land, what is serviced and could be developed relatively easy within the next few years. It also requires the city to look more at fair housing issues and other issues related to that. So it's substantially different than what you've done before. If you did a housing needs analysis today, would it change your economic opportunities analysis? I don't think so. The challenge you're going to have with either a housing needs analysis or an EOA, when you look at areas where you might want to grow into in the future, as we talked about at the last meeting, you guys are really surrounded by land that's challenging to develop. So it's got hillsides or steep slopes, landslide hazards, floodplains, those kind of things. Building across the other side of a river requires bridges, all of that. So very expensive infrastructure. So I won't take a guess at what your housing needs analysis is going to show in terms of land supply when you do it next. But I'm willing to bet that the city will have a certain number of actions that it has to work through for development ready land and other affordable housing issues. So the ONA asks cities to look at housing particularly different than they have in the past. So is that helpful? All right, so then going on to the next slide. So I'm just going to zip through a few things that came with the economic opportunities analysis. So one of the things we start with is looking at employment in Cottage Grove, and this is employment that is covered employment, so covered by unemployment insurance. So in 2022, you had about 3,600 covered employees, businesses here in Cottage Grove. That was growth of a little more than 400 employees since 2007. So you had slow but steady growth in employment. As we continue on, we looked at a number of different employment forecasts and asked the question, which of these forecasts are most appropriate? So we looked at one that was called a safe harbor for forecasting employment growth at the rate of population growth, about 0.42% per year. It's a little slower. It's half the speed that you grew in the past. And then we also, at the upper end, looked at another safe harbor, which is looking at the rate of growth that the Oregon Employment Department forecasts for Lane County. That's our region. And that was 0.94%. That was a little faster than historic employment growth, but not so much faster that it seemed a concern. So in working with our committee and talking with you, we elected to use the regional employment growth forecast, which shows growth of about 986 new employees in Cottage Grove over the next 20 years. So one of the things that we did is we adjusted that employment forecast so that it accounted for employees that aren't covered by unemployment insurance. So for total employees, like it's your gig economy folks in there, all of that. And looking at the 2025 estimate, that was about 4,800 employees in Cottage Grove, forecasting that you would grow to about 5,800 employees by 2045. In thinking about average employment densities, so that's how many employees per acre, and looking at what you have here in Cottage Grove. That got us, that new employment got us to a forecast of about 102 gross acres of employment land, most of that being not residential, industrial, 73 acres. So in the next slide, there we go. Looking at the comparison between your supply of buildable land and your demand for buildable land, you have a very minor surplus. I wouldn't even really call it a surplus of commercial land. You have almost exactly the amount that you need, but we know that your commercial land has been being used for housing. So you're going to need to manage your commercial land very well. And as we'll talk about in a few minutes, look at opportunities for supporting redevelopment. Industrial, you have a 13-acre land deficit. Unlike with housing, you do not have a requirement to expand your UGB to accommodate that 13 acres, but you're allowed to expand your UGB to accommodate that 13 acres. You have to look at land use efficiency measures and some other things before you do that expansion. So you've got a minor deficit of industrial land and just about the exact right amount of commercial land. Just looking at a couple of the target industries that inform the EOA, looking at things like manufacturing, wood products, furniture manufacturing, food manufacturing, other types of things. Smaller warehouse and distribution centers, so not necessarily the several hundred acre size of those. You don't have the right, I would say I-5 interchanges to support those for one thing. For another thing, you don't have the land base to support them. Looking at healthcare and social assistance, hotels and lodging and services for visitors and tourism in those places where you've got a lot more employment growth opportunities. On the next slide, please. So before I go on to talk about policies, were there any questions about the results of the EOA? All right, so then economic development policies. There's a lot more of these that you have in your packet, but I'm just hitting a few of the high ones. So looking at the economic development goals, encouraging opportunities to broaden your economic base. Considering your historical heritage and natural amenities of the area, so taking advantage of those. Looking at the location within community distance of the Eugene Springfield area by providing residential development opportunities and commercial services for people who want to work up in Eugene Springfield, but live in a smaller town that's historic. Looking at opportunities to support entrepreneurship and small growth of small businesses. On the next one, how do you support your manufacturing businesses? Looking at your industrial land, so making sure that you're managing it as well as you can. Creating opportunities where you can do things like Project Sparrow. Attracting industrial development by assuring that your community is attractive and a desirable place to live, work, shop, and play. And then supporting redevelopment of underutilized industrial and commercial lands to provide opportunities for business growth and expansion. That last one is going to be particularly important, especially for commercial. I know that you've been having some discussions about urban renewal, and that's where that would fit in. So in the next slide. So these are just a few of the selected policies. I've left the numbers in there so that you can, in fact, I'm not starting number 4. I'm not showing 1 through 3. So providing an adequate supply of suitable and service employment land, looking at opportunities to support redevelopment areas where you've got obsolescent or underutilized commercial and industrial development, and considering economic development incentives such as establishing an urban renewal district, whether you want to look at property tax abatements, loans, or assistance with infrastructure. You've got opportunities to streamline regulation. That's always a good idea. Other incentives that help businesses choice to locate in Cottage Grove. Looking at, on the next slide, selected industrial policies. So looking at opportunities for industrial development, considering redevelopment opportunities, which can be particularly difficult with industrial at times. Preserving your prime industrial land while considering opportunities for rezoning land that's not prime industrial land. So little tiny disconnected pieces of industrial land, maybe they can be better used in some other way. And reviewing your industrial land projection, but also your commercial land projection every few years. You don't really want to do this every 20 years. Because if 20 years have passed, it's probably a little bit late. And then my last slide is about commercial policies. So ensuring that your central district business district remains the heart of the community. I can see that you're making some pretty big infrastructure investments out front as it is. Encouraging infill and redevelopment of land within your commercial areas, especially your underutilized commercial areas. Leveraging the benefits of Cottage Grove's historic downtown to improve your business climate and encourage business growth. And then identifying areas where a combination of commercial and residential uses are appropriate, allowing for mixed-use development in those areas. But also considering opportunities that you need to preserve your commercial lands. So that's what I had for you. I'm happy to answer questions.
Anyone have questions? Counselor Urban.
5 slides ago, middle point on the attracting of industrial, one right before this, strive to attract industrial development by assuring first that the community is an attractive and desirable place. Can you give examples of factors in your experience?
One of the big ones is housing. So you have to have housing that's affordable. The nice thing is compared to the Eugene Springfield market, Cottage Grove's housing is more affordable. If you think about it, I always am called to mind the businesses that are kind of footloose and could locate anywhere. So I'm thinking about a motor business that located in Ashland, because Ashland is what Ashland is. It's a very high quality community. Cottage Grove, of course, is different than Ashland. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but the reason a business would move here is different than the reason a business would move to Ashland. So I would say being the best at what you are. And so looking for the amenities that you have in your community and how you can take advantage of them to, ensure that you've got good quality of life here. The other thing I would think about is infrastructure, where you can support development of infrastructure and making sure that you're planning for your infrastructure, so your water, your wastewater, your streets, that is as functioning as possible. So those are some things right off the top of my head.
Thank you. You mentioned streamline the regulatory landscape. Was this our regulatory landscape part of the review in this process?
We didn't do a code review now.
Anyone else? All right. At this time, we will receive testimony from interested members of the public. Please remember to state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we do not have anyone signed up for this item. I will now close the public hearing at 7:39 p.m. Council will deliberate and make a decision on this ordinance as agenda item 8A. Thank you, Ms. Goodman. Item B, public hearing for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, Title 14, Section 14.37.200, flood damage prevention. Melanie.
The purpose of this public hearing is to receive comments on the proposed amendments to Title 14, Section 14.37.200, flood damage prevention of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code. Staff is proposing these amendments.
Ms. Clemmer.
Excuse me, Melanie. Mayor needs to read a script real quick.
Let me read this. Sorry, Melanie. This public hearing is being held to receive public testimony for an ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, Title 14, Section 14.37.200, flood damage prevention. These proceedings will be recorded. In accordance with state law and city land use procedures, I will summarize tonight's Type 4 legislative procedure and the standards of review. First, staff will receive the staff report and identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan or the state of Oregon statewide planning goals that apply to this proposal. Staff will also review the Planning Commission's recommendation on the proposal. Following staff's presentation, we'll take a public testimony and then return to staff to present additional material or comments based on this testimony. Follow that, Following that, council will close the public hearing. Your testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the identified substantive criteria or the other substantive criteria in the comprehensive plan, development code, or statewide planning goals, which you believe apply to this application. Failure to raise any issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or other interested parties of this opportunity to respond may preclude an appeal of a decision of this proposal at this time. For anyone wishing to speak, if you are accessing the meeting in person or using video, please raise your hand to be recognized. If you're accessing the meeting using only audio, please announce that you would like to speak. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the presiding officer and state your name and address for the public record. We ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Presentations will be timed and you will be informed when your allotted time has expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by the presiding officer to immediately conclude their remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to the staff. Written testimony may be offered and will be considered and made part of the record. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group. Each person may testify only once unless called upon at the request of council member to respond to a question. Before we begin, the chair and councilors are required to disclose any or actual potential conflict of interest in this matter. Does any councilor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? All right. I will now open the public hearing for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, Title 14, Section 14.37.200 flood damage prevention at 7:43 p.m. We may now have the staff report.
Shall I start over, Mayor, Council, or just proceed
It's-
from where? I
It's
left off?
it's fine.
Staff is proposing these amendments in an effort to come into compliance with FEMA's pre-implementation compliance measures, PICM, regarding development in the floodplain through participating communities in the National Flood Insurance Program. These amendments are required to continue to participate in the NFIP and provide flood insurance to our residents. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the attached ordinance on April 23rd, 2025, and recommended approval of the draft ordinance to council. It is now appropriate that council hold a public hearing on the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to the meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Does the council have any questions? No, I see none. At this time, we will receive testimony from interested members of the public. Please remember to state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Chuck Howe? Okay.
Mayor Soulsby, Council, I just wanted to point out that City Attorney Carrie Conley is also online.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for staff? I now close the record and hearing at 7:45 p.m. Council will deliberate and make a decision on this ordinance as Agenda 8B. Consent agenda. Counselor Irvin.
Thank you. Council approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Item 8, resolutions and ordinances. A, first vote for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan to add the 2025 Cottage Grove Economic Opportunities Analysis and amend the economic element.
Mayor, members of council. Council has held a public hearing on the proposed ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan to add the 2025 Cottage Grove Economic Opportunities Analysis and amend the economic element. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the attached ordinance on April 23rd, 2025, and recommended approval to council. It is now appropriate that council consider the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Do you have an ordinance number?
I do. Ordinance number 3192.
3192. Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Move that the council adopt ordinance number 3192, amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan to add the 2025 Economic Opportunities Analysis and amend the economic element.
I second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? See none. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Settlemyer,
Aye.
Counselor Merity,
Aye.
Counselor Hine. Aye. Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Counselor Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Item B. First vote for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code Title 14, Section 14.37.200 flood damage prevention. Ms. Clemmer.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Council has held a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Title 14, Section 14.37.200 flood damage prevention of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the attached ordinance on April 23rd, 2025, and recommended approval to council. It is now appropriate that council consider the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Counselor Irvin.
Mayor, I move the council adopt ordinance number 3193, amending Title 14, Section 14.37.200 flood damage prevention, Cottage Grove Municipal Code.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? I see none. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Counselor Hine. Aye. Counselor Irvin. Counselor Wilson,
Aye.
Counselor Settlemyer,
Aye.
Counselor Merity,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Business from the City Council. Item A, Counselor Subcommittee Appointment for Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Commission. Ms. Clemmer.
Mayor, members of council. There are currently there are currently vacancies on the Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Commission. The following are the positions that need to be filled. Planning Commission has one position that needs to be filled, created by the resignation of Commissioner Thomas Monroe, with the term expiring December 31st, 2025. We do have one applicant at this time. Historic Preservation Commission has one position that needs to be filled, created by the term expiration of Commissioner Tara Sue Hugart. The position is for the remainder of the 3-year term, which expires December 31st, 2027. There are no applicants at this time. The positions were advertised in the Cottage Grove Sentinel on April 30th and May 7th, 2025, and will be advertised a third time on May 14th, 2025. They are also listed on the city's website. The recruitment will close for applications on May 21st, 2025 at 5 p.m. The council is being asked to appoint 2 interview subcommittees consisting of 3 city councilors to interview applicants applying for the Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Commission. Staff will return to council with the interview subcommittee's recommendations when interviews have been conducted.
We talked about this at agenda session and it looked like we had some interested people. So Counselor Settlemyer, you said you wanted to be Counselor Mary Day, then Counselor Hike. And all 3 of you wanted to be on both? Okay. Yeah.
Excuse me, Mayor, could you take time to appoint a chair as well?
Yes. Would anyone be interested in volunteering to be the chair? Yes. Counselor Hink. Item B, council goal discussion. Mr. Sauerwein.
Well, good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. While Jessica's passing this out to you, just as a quick recap, at our city council retreat, we developed a list of goals and objectives. And after discussing those list of goals and objectives, our consultants that had facilitated the meeting did a survey of council members to establish your priorities for goals and the objectives for each goal. So what you have before you this evening is the results of that survey. You'll notice that the goals have changed orders, and there also are goals listed, or rather the objectives are listed in the order based on your ranking. I'd quickly ask you to turn to page 4, which is, and look at goal number 4, community growth. Under that goal, when we get to that point, I just want to note that the goal involving unhoused and homeless folks was added at the last meeting, and what you have is the language and verbiage provided by our city attorney. But what I would suggest this evening, Your Honor, is that we go through the goals and the objectives, just to confirm that, these are the goals and objectives of the council and that you do agree with the priorities that they've been given. And if that's the case, then let's address the one that was added. And then hopefully we can move to adopt the goals and objectives for 2026 fiscal year.
Counselor Sedemire.
I haven't had a chance to look and find, didn't we talk about another objective that we were going to speak about? Or is that something that comes in as an amendment later with the attorney's help?
Are you referring to under goal number 4 on page 4, the added goal involving homeless folks?
Yes.
Yeah. As I said, that has been added, and I think when we get to goal number 4, have a conversation about where you would like to see that ranked under the objectives.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Good.
no problem. So with that, Your Honor and council members, it's kind of up to your pleasure.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Just maybe putting a placeholder in this and thinking about the budget. Here it's coming right up for first meeting, but in terms of financial sustainability, I like what I'm seeing here, but then there's also policy that we set in the budget, usually referenced in the budget document. It's like, we want this amount of reserve, we want this kind of carryover. So I just don't want to lose sight of that. I would like to see it as a goal in here, but so long as it's actually in the budget document, I think it's probably appropriate. That's my comments on the financial sustainability.
Counselor Merriday.
I just wanted to get a clarification on the ranking. Is it still the way we ranked them? So the lower the number, the higher the priority, and the bigger the number, the lower priority? Okay, just wanted to make sure that.
Think of it as golf, not bowling.
Okay, good.
Anyone else? Did you want us to do an action?
I was going to say, are there any other questions?
Counselor Lammerman.
Under Madam Mayor, Council, under goal 1.5, with the utility rate study, is that for both residential and commercial, everything all in one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if there's no further questions, okay. See what that is.
Mayor Soulsby.
Yes.
City Attorney Carrie Conley has asked to speak.
Yes, Carrie, thank you.
Hi. Okay, first, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, we're doing really well. Okay, so it's already a win. I just wanted to recognize that 410, which the city manager has mentioned a couple times, there are some brackets around a phrase, and so I didn't want there to be action until we have some direction on not only if you wanted to move 410 somewhere else, but how you want it to read. And my understanding from the council's direction was that you wanted to encompass kind of a continuation of the city's, ongoing goal to comply with state, local, federal laws regarding homelessness. And you can either do that in general, that could encompass, budgetary decisions you're making, or you could just focus it on how and where you manage the use of public property and resources. And I just, there's a lot of different ways to think about, or the ways that the city could manage unhoused issues. And so I just want to know if you want to focus it towards when managing the use of public property and resources, or if you want to eliminate that kind of narrower focus.
Counselor Sotomayor.
I had a hard time trying to figure out what it means one way or the other in those brackets. And I just have to say, I favor not having the bracket as it's written, because it essentially looks to me that we are quantifying when we are going to treat individuals humanely. And that may not be, from what you say, that isn't necessarily the intent, because, as far as focus given, but I think it's very clear that we don't deal with everything day to day, but as far as a policy, I'd like to see it written without the brackets, to just say, within our power, we're going to look at federal, state, and local laws and be humane.
Counselor Wilson.
So as I'm trying to understand exactly what you're getting to, you'd like that removed from the statement.
You want the brackets?
He wants the whole,
Or
what's in the brackets removed. Just have it end at individuals experiencing homelessness, period. Okay.
Counselor Urban.
Not sure what utility that goal serves when we narrowly focus it on homeless. I would just restate from the very beginning of all of this, as far back as I can remember, I think we have the quality of life behavior issue that hand with that we're having to deal with as a council and as a city. And so I'd prefer a policy, a goal to be stated at that level, rather than we're going to follow every law, thing that comes out, guidance. I think we should be prioritizing as a goal, manage our public spaces in a way that prioritizes quality of life for all of our residents and visitors alike. That we're a hospitable town. That we're not prioritizing one group or class over another as a city. It's a city's position. We leave that as that. We're going to treat everyone. We don't have to say it. We're prioritizing an optimal quality of life. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's what our economic analysis says. That's what I think we can just simplify things. We're trying to optimize the quality of life for everybody here at Bankhead Hospital. I think our policy and goal as it relates to me, my neighbor, homeless individuals, visitors that come from out of town, and everybody.
Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. In my personal opinion, I think we just need to get rid of the brackets, keep the language as written. Because we as council and the city can only really manage this city property and resources. We can't manage private property. So that being said, I think it deserves being stated in here as a goal that we look at managing those items when it comes to the unhoused and people in that situation. Because like I said, we can't control what Joe Snuffy does on his own property, but we can control what we do with the parks. We can control what we do with our open spaces, our water, our stuff like that. So I think it should be in there without the brackets. To me, it sounds fine.
Ms. Conley, can you reiterate why the use of the brackets was necessary?
So one, I think without the language, I think it's been articulated really well by the council this evening. Without the language in brackets, the statement is broader. It's more of a broader policy statement. With the language in brackets, it really hones in when and where is it that you're going to continue to uphold federal, state, and local laws. You're going to be doing that when you're managing your public property and resources. It isn't necessarily in adopting regulations that govern private behavior. It isn't. That's a really good example, actually. It's just when you're not, it isn't going to be when you're regulating private behavior.
So
Which this council does do, right?
The way I will decipher this is that the city is in the position where we do manage our public lands and public resources, but we don't manage people. So I would definitely keep that verbiage in there. And if the point of doing this is to keep it in our goals so that we're saying that it's, as Councilor Irvin said, as he stated, and I completely hear where you're coming from on this, because I do believe that we spend too much time separating people into different classes. And I think we need to stop doing that and treat everyone exactly the same. But right now, I think what this goal is meant to do is say that we're trying to work within our laws that we're being dealt right now and get that on paper. So, you know, that this is a goal and we'll do our best, but we do have to stay in our lane. And what we can do and what historically cities have been required to do is kind of changing a little bit, but we want to stay within the laws, but do what we can. So, I don't know. What do you think, Councilor Irvin?
I can imagine a situation where there would be a conflict between federal, state, and local laws.
Absolutely.
I think that's what we see. So to say that we're going to uphold all of these things sets yourself up for when there's a contradiction. Now what? You know, I don't even know if it's necessary to state if we're going to uphold federal, state, and local laws. That's why I'm more in favor of saying we're going to focus on quality of life for everyone, and nobody's targeted in a negative manner there. Everybody's targeted in a positive manner. Everybody's targeted as we're going to do the best by everybody. Just because laws that are, and I'm understanding local laws to be the ordinances that we said, I guess some of them could be maybe county rules, but I think the landscape is that there are many potentially, jurisdictions, municipalities that have laws that will be found to have violated state law. I don't know what the federal government's going to do, but it seems like it would be different than what Oregon is doing at this point. So why would we even state that we're going to follow both? Just maybe I'm not seeing the logic in it.
Counselor Lammerman.
So why don't we maybe just move the brackets up to where it would change this to basically get rid of the uphold federal, state, and local laws and change this to state. Continue to ensure the humane treatment of individuals experiencing homelessness when managing the use of public property and resources. Because then it takes out the federal, state, and local law portion and just brings it back down to the local level. Can we do that? Because that's basically touching on what you're saying, but putting everyone together when it comes to what we can manage. So basically just take out the verbiage, uphold federal, state, and local laws, but keep the rest of it.
This is it's such a weird landscape because this whole thing is objectively reasonable from the perspective, like that's the issue at hand, that nobody knows what that means. So I don't honestly know what humane means right now.
It's true.
And that means something to somebody. Probably means something different to all of us. So I don't know why we pigeonhole ourselves there. Unless we want to have broad discussion about what that means, so we can add that to the notes.
Counselor Wilson.
I have an idea of continue to uphold community standards to ensure the humane treatment of individuals when managing the use of public property and resources. Just individuals. That hits on your desire to not separate a group of people. We're sticking to our community standards. It's a broad interpretation, I understand, but it's ensuring humane treatment of everyone. Okay. And when we're managing our public property and resources, that's what we do as a council. We're staying in our lane, but we're trying to promote community standards that applies to everyone.
Counselor Sotomayor's first.
I love the idea of clumping in a way that when it's felt like we've had an onslaught compared to other things that people comment on involving the unhoused. And if we can simply say, okay, we know how we're handling that, in the broad terms, this isn't an unhoused question. If we can somehow quantify what we hear so often in a goal, I think that's appropriate. I asked about a policy at a previous meeting, and I keep on cycling back. I'm not the only one who keeps asking about that, even though I don't feel like I keep on asking, but I keep on saying, yeah, it makes sense that we are just trying to treat everybody in a positive way. Okay, so what does that mean in these situations? And there has to be some kind of like, where are we housing them during certain times? We've done that when we've allowed them to camp. We've got these park measures. That's for everybody, and that's for people from the community are going to come and ask. I almost feel like something that was proposed before, that maybe it would be best to not figure this thing out, but say we can, I heard of placeholders before, and if we can commit to having take another look at this in 3 weeks and guarantee that we have public input as to help us with this wording or something. I mean, it belongs on this document some way, somehow, with how much of our energy we spend listening to this and our community's concerns with this, I believe.
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Settlemeyer. Jogged my memory. Of what it was. What we're balancing is quality of life and the fiscal responsibility of the city. So what I'm hearing here is we do want, for the reasons you called out, which is the same thing we were talking about with police and library. You have things that were in the zeitgeist, in conversation. You want to address them in a goal. You want to state it. So I'm perfectly fine saying, as it relates to homelessness, city's approach, we're going to take the approach of maximizing the quality of life for everyone, for all residents and visitors, however we want to state that, while balancing the city's fiscal responsibility in the most appropriate manner. And that gets to, what do we need to do so that we're providing the necessary services, that we don't, lose our budget on being sued, so that we're the best stewards of the taxpayer dollars. That was the missing element that I was trying to remember. These are the constraints, because we could obviously maximize quality of life if we had infinite money, but we don't. And so we not only have the inability to spend everything we would want to, but we have to protect what we could lose through lawsuit. Those are the actual risks that we're managing as I understand it, as it relates to as a city, as it relates to the homeless situation in Oregon.
Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. So there's a lot of ideas going around. Does anyone have an actual solid idea of what we should put there? Because I'm hearing some ideas of the actual language, and then some tabling it basically to look at it at another point. Is there a consensus on an idea of what we can put there? That way we can kind of move on.
Counselor Merriday.
What I would like to see there is that we are going to continue to work on it and keep it in front of us and do all the things that we've all said, that we're going to manage our resources responsibly. We're going to treat everybody equally, but we also have to look at the fact that we're spending a tremendous amount of staff time and getting complaints from residents and from the unhoused about the way it's all going down. So it's a work in progress, as we've heard many times, and we need to keep it before us and work towards this within the constraints of the law to make sure that we are not taken to court, that we're not expending exorbitant staff time, we're not having illegal camping, having our police spend a lot of time dealing with illegal camping, and come up with something. We got to keep working on it, and that was my intent on wanting to see it in the goals. So I don't know if that's the language, but that was the intent from my side.
Counselor Hine.
Based on everything that's been said, does the city attorney have any suggestions on how this could be worded?
So I want to be really clear. I'm absolutely a scribe. This is your policy discussion to figure out what your desired direction is for yourselves and for the city. That said, so I'm not advocating for anything. I'm not advocating for what was there. I'm not advocating for the language in the brackets. What I think I'm hearing right now is shifting the focus from that continuing to uphold the law to more of a maximize the quality of life for housed and unhoused citizens when balancing city legal and fiscal either responsibilities or obligations.
Yeah.
Or-
That sounds good.
And
Kevin.
keep tinkering, keep tinkering.
Did you write that down?
That's why you make the big bucks.
Okay, so and that.
Can we
I
get
mean, of
that in
course,
writing?
I can put it in the chat. Mindy, does that help, or do you want me to, I'll just email it to Mindy. The only question I have is, do you want it to be obligations or do you want it to be responsibilities? I see some distinctions in those words. What I think I was hearing more in the discussion is responsibilities. But obligations, you know, definitely gives voice to the legal side of things. So as everybody said, you're continuing to tinker. I can leave that as an option for now, and you can circle back to it unless somebody had, you know, direction for me right now, and we can synthesize it.
How does everyone feel on that? Yeah, it sounds like we have a consensus, Carrie, of obligations.
Great, great. Okay, thank you.
Did you get that, Mindy?
So what I'm, Mayor, what I'm hearing is a consensus for the statement that Carrie just quickly crafted based on council input, and that there's a consensus to accept that objective to be added to goal number 4.
There is.
Okay, so the next step would be to prioritize where you want that in the section of goal 4. And that could be done by consensus as well.
Counselor Hike.
Would there be a way to resend that survey for this section?
It certainly could. I think, Counselor Heinck, Mayor, I think the hope was really that we could move forward with this and get it put to bed. And because these goals really do help drive your budget committee process as well.
Counselor Lammerman.
I'm fine with leaving it in its 4.10 where it's at.
Counselor Irvin.
It seems like our guiding principle, I don't, but it's hot. It's how do we approach what we do here as a city with all of our residents? And everything below that supports that goal.
That works with.
And also the housing needs, I'm still not convinced. I don't know where we are in the timeline on the housing needs analysis. Was it 2018?
Yes.
And then, so we're gonna basically be mandated to do that. Pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Counselor Merriday.
What is left to do with complete the economic opportunities analysis? We've accepted it now. Is that goal complete?
Quick.
All right, then I would suggest that we switch those places, that we move that our newly crafted goal into that place and move that opportunities analysis to the bottom.
Counselor Hike.
I agree.
I would agree to that. Do we have a consensus? Yes. All right. Looks like we have a consensus on that.
So Mayor, just to clarify, 4.10 will be going up and replacing
4.5.
4.5 and 4.5. Is it off entirely or
No,
moving
I
to
would
the
like
bottom?
to leave it there as accomplished. Switch it in the bottom.
Consensus to
Yes.
swap so that we can check the box.
Right. So, Ms. Roberts?
So the final step, I would think in the review of this document, if you've reached a consensus on those changes, would be to accept and approve the council goals as presented. It'd be the final step.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We did it.
That we did a goal before we even set our.
That's how far behind we were. All right. Concerns from council? Counselor Sutherland?
God, I'm trying to find the right objective and stuff. Okay, I'm trying to be good with this. I was told that if I wanted to be specific about community engagement and trust, now is the time to say, okay, goal number 1 point. Oh, man, moved them. I don't remember what number. Okay. Because it changed. I'm sorry, I didn't see this yet. It's now 3.4. Increase in-person and digital two-way community engagement opportunities. Our last draft said example town halls. I would like to suggest that we strive to have and schedule them before the next meeting, having one town hall meeting a quarter and work through. I would love for this to be a subcommittee to try and figure out the feasibility of it, where it isn't something that we outlay funds. We deal with topics both that the participating council members want to deal with and whoever attends the town hall meeting. And there are ways to do that, you know, just from facilitating some kind of give and take. My rationale is public meetings seem to be about the only place, and that's people coming to the podium, and it never really feels like a time to do give and take and explain and ask and question in a way where people feel listened to as much as I think that we can accomplish. And the idea of me getting more information by being able to ask questions, and that being something that doesn't infringe on the time of our actual more formal meetings right now. So yes, I was hoping that at least we could set up a subcommittee and maybe commit to have our first town hall meeting with the idea of maybe them being quarterly, but one before we finish our budget acceptance this year.
And if we were going to do that, we would probably want to rotate counselors so that we don't have quorum. Would be one idea, so that we don't have to would make sense.
Is it I mean, we can do either way, can't we?
You can.
So can it be perhaps, depending on the number of counselors that are interested, and then we just work it whichever way the
just-
numbers present?
It would just mean that we would have to let the public know in advance. I mean, which we would anyway, and then we have to put it online. So it would be, it would limit where you could have it for sure.
Yeah.
So. Counselor Lammerman.
Just a quick comment on Counselor Settlemeyer's statement. Maybe we should do it like an open forum with all of us. And then we can obviously comply with all the public meeting laws, but I think it would be a little bit more beneficial to the public's interest to have all of us seated there instead of only 2 or 3. And I think that would help draw in more members of the public to want to come. Because everyone has the opportunity to come down, but not a lot of people are able to either get off work or come down to their family or some other obligation. So I think a big issue would be the timing, because we could probably sit there all day, all weekend, getting questions and trying to answer things. And the rebuttal to people's comments. I mean, you've seen how long some of these meetings can go with simple issues.
One second. Ms. Conley, is there anything that you would want to add to doing a town hall?
I just
Suggestion.
heard Counselor Lammerman speak to the only concern that I have, which is, of course, you follow all public meetings, laws, requirements. And if you're all going to be there and you're going to be fact-finding and potentially deliberating towards a decision, even if it isn't made that evening, we want to have it in an accessible location with the notice, as you normally do for regular meetings or work sessions, minutes. I can work with staff to make sure that meets those requirements. Otherwise, it's up to you. It's more of a time commitment, and you've all put in a lot of time, and you continue to put in a lot of time.
Counselor Sotomayor.
We have a crazy opportunity here since we're just rolling out the budget. And I'm a science teacher. I love experiments. I'm willing to put in some time I would really love to make this a subcommittee with some perspectives from some other counselors, and we come up with a format and we roll out some date between now and when we're going to, as a council, adopt this budget and give the community an opportunity. And we're trying to be as transparent as possible. And I love the idea of seeing what kind of positive things we can do by sharing in something that I think will be a high interest topic to the community.
Okay, so Counselor Urban, go ahead.
Yeah, just share my support for the idea. I like the idea of the whole council. I was thinking Saturday market. Maybe it could work, something where there's the public square kind of thing. But I would also, it's advantageous, I like it, before the budget committee or the budget adoption. But if we could, but if in future ones, pairing it with a survey that would be sent out, which spurred another thought that at that League of Oregon Cities conference, I think I texted you about the mailer. There's a way to get a really reduced mailing rate if you have the right account set up at the post office, but send out surveys and say, hey, everybody's invited. So yes, support for that. then I have a question about the federally qualified health clinic status, where it is, but just leave that there for.
Well, you can probably ask it now.
What is the status of the federally qualified health clinic construction? Is it still underway? Is it up and running? Just
Up and running.
up and running?
Counselor Sotomayor?
So should I ask the council, does or how do we do a subcommittee? Or recommend we do a subcommittee, or do I move that we do and see how people vote? Okay. I move we do a subcommittee to establish a trial town hall meeting between now and when the budget is adopted by the city council this year.
Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Lammerman?
Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager, when is the deadline for the budget adoption?
I don't have the actual dates in front of me, but basically your second meeting in June.
The second meeting in June?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We have a motion with a second. Any more discussion? All right, all those, Counselor Wilson.
So in your idea of a subcommittee to come up with an idea, do you want, generally subcommittee is three?
Three.
So that we're not gonna have a quorum and don't have to do the meeting laws and stuff. Okay.
Oh,
So we
I'm
would-
sorry. Let me interject. Yes, the subcommittee does have to comply with public meetings laws. You're not going to get around that. You're creating a
Right.
subcommittee. It's coming back with a recommendation to this council. The subcommittee complies with public meetings laws. Sorry to interrupt.
Appreciate the interruption.
So Mindy, could we have you send out a inquiry of who would like to be on the subcommittee?
I think, Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're indicating is that the meeting of the subcommittee would have to be publicly noticed as a meeting, but they could solicit council members to be on the subcommittee tonight and create that subcommittee.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I just heard though that the meetings wouldn't be subject to the public
Well,
meetings laws, and that the mayor, I wasn't sure if the mayor wanted to handle that appointment process right now.
Yeah, we can do that. Is anyone interested in being in that subcommittee? Got two? No, okay, we've got our three. So it's Counselor Urban and Counselor Sotomayor and Counselor Merriday.
So I might have spaced out in the middle of that. I know we had a motion and a second. Did we actually vote on that?
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Oh, and we need a chair. Counselor Sotomayor will chair that. All right. Any other concerns of council? Counselor Merriday.
The hospital is an out-of-state absentee landlord. They're delinquent on their taxes and they're unresponsive, I believe, to many of the inquiries of the city, but we can use our means for the nuisance ordinance for high weeds and other actions at our disposal. There's also a Benny Hubble blackberry removal project that is designed primarily for exactly as you state, to create access to the rivers. And Don Norden is chairing that and would love some help. We had a great showing for Cottage Grove in Salem on Friday, and I want to express my appreciation to Councilors Wilson and Irvin for accompanying us and I believe it was an educational civics lesson for the Irvin family, and I know it certainly was for me. We witnessed in the time we were there waiting for our turn, multiple appeals from municipalities over the breadth of Oregon. And I believe every third one, or maybe it was every other one, was requesting money for water systems or sewer systems or both. And so it made me feel very appreciative of Cottage Grove's utility system and how we've kind of bit the bullet and kept up with things and are not under that duress that many of these communities have expressed. But there's a long line of people seeking the funds, but I think that the level of organization that the Cora has done has put us in a good position. I'm holding out hope, and I again want to express my appreciation for the fellow counselors to show support for our community. And lastly, I was contacted by a member of our community that is experiencing mobility issues and had concerns about how to get to City Hall to handle their utility bill and other business, and was called and was informed that they could use the parking lot, but this constituent was concerned about getting the message out to other people that might not be electronically connected, so that not seeing the Friday update and all. So I was wondering if we could work in a note in the utility bill about how to access downtown during construction overall. So I just wanted to pass on that constituent concern.
Counselor Hike.
On that, we've experienced this with ODOT. If you can put the messaging on the outside of the envelope, people take notice of it much more often than like enclosed inside the statement.
Counselor Stottlemyre.
I almost forgot. In my duties representing Cottage Grove with El Rapa, they gave access to this really fun outdoor air quality guide that I hope to, as the weather changes, get some of these laminated and learn from city staff where the right places might be around public playgrounds and things. A really nice thing is they talk about the numbers associated with air quality, which is a real thing in our community, I'm afraid to say right now, and anybody around here knows that. And it's really nice that you can find out the air quality at your position by simply using this little QR code that's there. So I hope this is a tool. It's an example of something kind of fun to share and learn about, I hope. Thanks. Oh, and there's some back there on the table if you want one.
Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council, since we have our attorney here tonight, we had discussed drafting the language on the public nuisance ordinance. Where were we at with that?
I'll talk about that under my report unless the city manager is going to address it under his report.
I just have one quick thing to say that Saturday I had a really great day up at the Bohemia Mines, and all the miners came out and it was so neat. They did hot dogs and fed the group, and it was a really big turnout, and there was people all down in the river mining, and it's just great that they're keeping this alive, our historical heritage. And thank you, Dick, for showing us around. And it was a really fun experience, and seeing all the little kids down there learning the trade. It was pretty special. All right. Anyone else? All right. Business from the city manager.
Well, good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. 2 PowerPoints that they're going to be passing out to you. Things I wanted to cover this evening is first the third quarter budget update, and then start the conversation about a law enforcement utility fee. And the chief and I are going to be tag teaming a little bit on that. So, so your third quarterly budget update, our goal is to make data-driven decisions that are in the best long-term interests of the city. And tonight, what I wanted to do really was four things. First, talk a little bit about the general fund, give you the revenue highlights, also the department budgets for the general fund, and then talk about revenue in the utility funds, water, wastewater, and storm drainage. And finally, wanted to talk about the proposed 2025, 2026 utility rates. This will be a little preview of the of tomorrow night's meeting, but just make sure there's no surprises. Wanted to touch on it this evening. So the general fund revenue highlights, our property taxes, as you know, our budget was for $5.8 million. We've actually brought in about 5.7 million. We're only about 2% off from what our estimate was, which is really good because my usual rule of thumb is it's more like about 3 to 5% is uncollectible. So we're actually doing very well with the property taxes. Council members asked me specifically about transient room taxes, so I included it in this report. We'd budgeted 125,000. We've brought in about 80,000 so far. And traditionally, just looking at past years, April, May, and June have kind of been our bigger months for transient room taxes. So we'll see how that turns out. And then also, of course, we have the other taxes, liquor, cigarette, franchise fees, permits, facility rentals.
Counselor Irvin.
On the transient room taxes, what's the delay on seeing that? I thought we handed something over either to the state, it was the county at some point years ago, but isn't it quarterly instead of monthly now?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's what I mean is you don't have the April, May, or June numbers included in this. And to be honest, I'm not sure that you've even got the second or the third quarterly numbers included in this, let alone the fourth. Briefly, I just want to run through the general fund departments. The city council, city manager departments are about where you'd expect them to be at this point. The finance department, the less expenditures, I think, shows how we've restructured that department and has resulted in some savings. On the next slide, the police budget, I do want to highlight. Now, our goal is to fully staff our police department. That's a stated goal both the chief and I have, and I think the numbers reflect the vacancies, and the chief and I will be talking about that a little more in a moment. Our municipal court and the court support services, again, about where we'd expect them to be in this point in the year. I've included this slide in previous presentations. I'm including it again because I firmly believe that the key to adult education is repetition. Just to note again that if you include our police budget, our South Lane Communications, which is our dispatch, and our library, that's about our entire property tax budget. So just between really those two programs, police and library, pretty much eats up all of the property tax revenue that we receive. Other general fund budgets, the maintenance, engineering, and broadband services, again, these budgets are operating about where you'd expect them to be at this point in the year. For the community development department, I just want to note that, even though the budget is $1.5 million, about 950,000 of that is in a grant that we actually did not receive. So again, where we'd expect to be this year to date is about where we are. The library budget, I think, reflects that we did have an unfilled position and there was some savings from that. There also was a reduction in the level of service by that savings. And I'll be talking more about that when we get into the budget process tomorrow evening. And community services, our community center, again, I think the budget's about where you'd expect it to be. Same for community promotions, human resources. Not seeing anything that's really surprising or jumping out here. And of course, our internal support, I've had people ask me, why is this budget at $2.9 million? And the answer is because there's a number of things in there like the Southland Communications, where we keep our debt service contingency and our unappropriated ending fund balances. So the fact that we've spent about $400,000 year to date is about where we'd expect that budget to be. For our utilities, just for their revenue, and again, I would note that the April, May, and June revenue is not included in this. The water budget, the wastewater budget, and the storm drain, our revenues are about where we would expect them to be. But I do want to highlight the golf course revenue. Now, this is part of the wastewater department, but we budgeted $664,000, and year to date, we've already brought in $591,000. And by far our biggest 3 months, the golfers, are chomping at the bit to get out on the course. April, May, and June are by far our best months. So huge congratulations to our folks in the golf course. They're really doing what they need to do to bring in the revenue from them. So like I said, I just wanted to give you a quick preview of tomorrow night and what's happening with our proposed residential water, wastewater, and stormwater rates for 2025, 2026. And you have the actual numbers here for the current rate and the proposed rate. Rather than going through and doing percentages, what I'd like to do is just kind of bottom line it for you and say, this is what we think is going to happen as far as people what's going to happen to their water and sewer rates. So next page, if you're the typical single family home and you're using about 5,000 gallons of water per month, you're going to see your monthly bill go up about $6, $7. We also looked at Main Street businesses. We kind of broke them into two categories, those that would use a nominal amount of water and those that would also use higher water usage. So for a nominal amount of water usage, like a retail shop or a bookstore, they'd be looking next year at an increase of about $8, $9 per month. For a higher water user, a salon, a restaurant, tattoo parlor, probably more like about $11, $12 a month increase. We also looked at businesses outside of the downtown core, not naming any specific businesses, but if you have a large parking lot and you're using a lot of storm drainage, those businesses may be looking at about $32, $33 a month increase in their water and sewer bill. And for large businesses that are located outside the city limits that do manufacturing, again, not naming any specific businesses, they're looking at about $180 a month increase in their water and sewer bills. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Questions? Councilor Merida.
I believe that of our total income, our property tax is about 19% of the total income for the city. Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I believe if you're including total revenue, meaning water and sewer, utility, probably, I think 19-20% would probably be reasonable. Like most cities our size, our utility budgets are significantly larger than our general fund.
Councilor Lammerman.
With the rate increases, where are we at with the status of our audits? Because I think it'd be kind of interesting to look at increasing rates when we haven't done any audits for the last 2 years.
Well, I can give you more details on how the rates were established. We were working with an outside consulting firm and a new software package, and we'll be doing a presentation at the Thursday City Council meeting, giving you detailed analysis of how those rates were generated. To answer your question directly about doing city audits, you're absolutely right. We have not completed either our 2023 or 2024 audit. I'll talk about this more again tomorrow night, but we have hired an outside consultant, a CPA, who's gone back in the city books to 2022 and is essentially rebuilding the city's finances from 2022 forward. She's completed work on the 2022-2023 fiscal year, and we've had a contract proposed to us from a local CPA firm to perform that 2022-2023 audit. As often happens in these situations, we received the contract proposal, we referred it to our city attorney, who reviewed the contract proposal, had some questions, and we are still in the process of negotiating that contract with the CPA firm. But you're absolutely right. We have not completed 2 years audits, and we're in the process of trying to catch up.
So I guess my main question on that is, should we be looking at increasing rates right now when we haven't gotten those documents in yet for the audit?
As I
Or should
said,
we
our
wait
rate,
until we can see them?
the rate proposals are based on operations cost. We can show you what our operations costs are. And again, we'll have graphics and other information to show you how we develop these rates at your Thursday budget committee meeting. But I think it would be imprudent for us to wait until we complete those 2 audits, because that could take some time. And again, we're basing our rate increase on what our operational costs are. Nobody likes raising water and sewer rates. We have a lot of people on fixed incomes in our community. Everybody just got hit by increases in electric rates, gas utility rates. We're all paying. And unfortunately, those are part of what's driving our costs because we utilize those electricity to produce water and treat sewage.
Yeah, this is a struggle for me, raising these rates. Serving.
Just kind of lighten back to what Councilor Meredith was saying, one of the insights that pulled from that beg for money session at the Capitol was just at least what was being presented was the dire situation. There were more moratoriums. It's not just Crestwell, I forget what the other city was, but some of them were talking about having raised it 400% to keep up. Others were 20% last year, 12% this year, and they were all unable to make it. And others were already in collections there. I mean, there was a lot of, I was shocked with how many cities were coming because they hadn't prepared and managed it. And so, I mean, I hear the concerns. I think as I understand it, and I'd love to be educated if I'm misunderstanding it, but what an audit might show is if a fund is unhealthy. I remember being in the previous audit sessions and traffic light signals where, hey, this is an unhealthy fund, meaning it doesn't have enough to support itself. So if the rate study is correct, which I don't have any reason to believe it isn't, accurately predicting what we need to cover costs going forward, then the audit would just reveal that we were unhealthy if we didn't raise it. But that would come out later. And the audit isn't checking our future books, it's checking past. So I mean, it's just the cost going up, and we gotta keep a responsible, manner. It's just painful.
Counselor Sotomayor.
Yeah, the lesson of putting things off, we've learned with our streets. I don't know the answer to other than you've got to keep water flowing and flowing away. So.
Counselor Lammerman.
I guess one of my only worries is kind of where do we draw the the hypothetical line here, because I'd hate to see residential households end up being charged the same rate as the commercial customers are right now, because they're 3 times higher than most base rates for residential right now. So increasing it more, if we just keep doing that, is Mary Jo on disability going to be able to afford $300 a month for water? That's what, like, council said, you're looking at me a little sideways on that, but if we keep increasing rates every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, eventually our $120 roughly fee every month for water services at your house, they're going to end up 200, 300 at some point. So my question mainly is, when is enough enough? Where are we ever going to hit that cap where we can quit increasing?
So we were just getting presented this, and so this is something to mull over, and because it's just hasn't really been talked about at all. So Councilor Merida.
Thank you, Mayor. I've spent a lot of time with the utilities, yeah, it would be wonderful if we could just say, okay, yeah, we're just going to ignore the economics that are that's surrounding us and hold a certain rate. But if we do that, we will actually increase our indebtedness, because the enterprise funds are designed to pay for themselves. So if costs increase, the rates have to increase. Otherwise, you operate at a deficit. Now, if I know that the people on fixed incomes, that is a concern. So what we could do is we could raise the rates a bit higher and incorporate a fund to help people on a fixed income. So the people that can afford to pay more would essentially pay for the people that couldn't afford the rate increases. So that is an option.
Councilor Irvin.
It was a great segue to the idea of reinforcing success. We have an amazing golf course potential machine that is underutilized in what it could be. Maybe we look at something like that as a long-term strategy of maximizing its profitability. It's still part of the water fund, and funneling that back in, which it has to, because it's part of that fund and it can't be spent anywhere else. But look at that as a strategy. You know, what can we do to maximize the golf course to offset costs for residents?
So is this for presentation purposes only?
Yeah,
tonight?
this is just, like I said, just wanted to give you guys a preview of tomorrow night's discussion. And as I said, traditionally, the budget committee, the first meeting, we try to get through the general fund, and the second meeting on Thursday is where we get into the utility funds. And we have arranged for our consultant that helped us do the rate study to be able to give a presentation at the beginning of your Thursday meeting. So you'll have the opportunity to see exactly how the rates were developed.
All right. Thank you.
All right. The second item that I had was a discussion of law enforcement utility fee. And again, I'll pass out. Did everybody get the second PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay.
Time. So we want to extend. We're okay. Okay. All right.
So our goal here is to develop a long-term sustainable and stable funding plan for the police department. And what I'd like to do this evening really is three things. First, talk about how our police department is going to be structured next year. Also talk about the police department budget, and then really start the conversation about a law enforcement utility fee. And let me be really clear, nobody's being asked to make any decisions this evening. Nobody's being asked, whether or not you support or oppose this idea. This is just the start of a conversation and to really kind of introduce the topic. So as far as our police department structure, apologize for the faded colors on this. You have a police chief with the executive assistant, and then we have two captains, an operations captain, an administrative captain, and then you see the sergeants and the police officers under those two captains. The police department budget for next year, if we include our dispatch with South Lane, it's about $5.2 million. And just by comparison, we're estimating our property tax revenue at 6.1. So that's about 85% of the property tax revenue. So what is a law enforcement utility fee? Well, if you look at cities that have it, there'll be a separate fee listed right on their monthly city utility bill. And the revenue from the fee is for a dedicated purpose that's established by the city council. This is your decision. It's a policy decision about how if the fee is created and how the funding is used. It can be adopted by the city council, or it can be referred to a vote of the people. You as the council do have the authority to implement the fee, or as I said, you can refer it to the people. As an example, I'd give you the Eugene Fire District fee, which they tried to implement, and then there was an initiative petition to put it on the November election. There's really no statewide list that the chief and I could find that lists all the cities that have a utility fee for law enforcement or for public safety. We did identify about 4 dozen different cities. The fees range from $2 per month to over $40 a month. And just a couple of, perhaps comparable cities. Veneta is at $6 a month. St. Helens is at 10. Grants Pass is over 12. Lebanon's at 18. Cresswell and Gresham, I want to talk a little bit more in detail about, because I think they serve as good examples of the different ways cities have implemented the fee. So, for example, with Cresswell, Cresswell has a public safety fee. It's $18.19. My understanding is in their next year's budget, they may be increasing that. Currently, their general fund, they contract with the sheriff's department, their general fund pays for half of a sheriff sergeant and then 2 deputies. And they use their public safety fee to pay for the other half of the sheriff sergeant, who's effectively their police chief or supervisor, and 2 other sheriff's deputies. So they have a total of 5 folks in their police department. Now, I'm going to be really clear that Cresswell has a very specific purpose for what they use the fee for. City of Gresham is kind of on the other end of the continuum. Gresham has what they call a police, fire, parks fee, and it's $15 per month for police, fire, and parks. 95% of it is dedicated to police and fire, and 5% is dedicated to city parks. And they actually use the use of the funds is determined by their city council on an annual basis. So, for example, in the case of Gresham, one year they may use the funds to buy fire equipment. The next year they may use it to buy police cars. So kind of think of this as a continuum. At one end of the continuum, you have cities like Cresswell, where the money is for a very specific purpose. On the other end of the continuum, you have cities like Gresham that have implemented the fee, but on an annual basis determine how they're going to use it. And, like I said, the 4 or 5 dozen other cities that we identified are somewhere in between, with a combination of being either very specific or being a little more flexible. So in the case of Cottage Grove, I'll let the chief chime in here in a moment and talk in more detail about this. We chose $10 simply as a benchmark. It's not a proposal, it's just a nice round number. If our utility fee were to be established at $10 a month, we have about 4,033 accounts that would generate a little under $500,000 every year. If we were to do that, we would be able to fund 4 new positions, 2 police officers, a school resource officer, and an additional detective, and then 2 community service officers. And with that, I'm going to let the chief talk about what those positions potentially could do.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So when we talk about positions in the police department, one of the things that we should note is the school resource officer position. And that's one that has been continually brought up since I started here just over a year and a half ago. And it's a position that we currently don't have enough staff to fill. And I know there's also been mention of a small stipend by the school district as an incentive for us to offset those costs. But the real issue is not having the number of officers on the street to be able to pull somebody out and dedicate them full time to work in the school. And with what our current authorized staffing levels are and what we're looking at for next year, it's probably not going to be the case either. So in order to fill that position, we need to try to add somewhere in our current staffing model so we can dedicate a police officer to the school district. And another thing that we would look at is also addressing what level of reimbursement support we would get from the school district as a result of dedicating an officer there full time. And when we look at adding a detective into our current staffing levels, when I got here, we had nobody working as a detective. So what that means is every single case, regardless of the complexity of it, was asked to be looked at or investigated by patrol officers who are also responsible for radio calls and responding to emergency calls for service. That becomes challenging when you have person crimes and things that need a higher level of training and investigation to be able to complete those properly, and also being able to attend things like child forensic interviews and things like that. So we did put one detective in that position, and I filled that last year in June, so not quite a year ago. That one detective currently, I just talked to her today. I believe she said 36 or 37 cases on her caseload right now that are only, and she's only currently carrying a caseload of serious person crimes, so felony level person crimes, not looking at property crimes, burglaries and things like that. What we've been doing is evaluating that caseload and reassigning some of those cases back to patrol. And what that means is as time allows. So in between their current call load and new reports that they're generating that have to be completed, we're asking them to do some of that follow-up if they can and are able to do it. If they're not, and there's no significant leads able to be generated, those cases are just simply going cold. So there's a number of things that we would like to do with an additional detective, and the main focus of that position would be to look at some of those property crimes, quality of life issues that we see in our community, and also addressing some of the higher level narcotics enforcement crimes that we currently don't have the resources to investigate. As far as the two community service officers go, we currently have one part-time community service officer, and previously there was two part-time CSOs. So we have on the budget, it's placed as 0.7 of an FTE. And so this would allow us to increase that by 1.3. So that would take us up to 2 full-time community service officers. And with that, the way our department is scheduled is we would have one community service officer on 7 days a week. So they would essentially work in conjunction with one of the patrol sides of the week. So, and that would allow us to be a little bit more responsive to illegal camping, illegal dumping, some of those lower level offenses that we get called frequently to, but oftentimes are tied up. So our response is delayed, or we're not able to be consistent in our enforcement of some of those things. Illegal parking is another issue that we deal with frequently. And right now, the way it is, our police officers just don't have the time to go out and tag vehicles that are illegally parked. And so what we rely upon is for our community service officer, when he's here and when he's on duty, to go around and track those vehicles based on time parked illegally, tag those vehicles, do the entries into our report writing system, and then follow up with them to get them either removed or closed out those cases if the owner of those vehicles moves them without us having to take action. They also handle all of our animal control stuff. So unless it's a really, really significant issue, like a vicious animal that has to be responded to, general calls for dogs at large and things like that. It's challenging for our officers to take time out of their day when they're down reports and they're trying to get caught up on more serious criminal offenses to be able to handle those calls. So we take them as time allows. But the community service officer, when he's on duty, is able to take care of those calls and to also utilize our kennels that we have on site at our public works work site. So having those community service officers and being able to staff that school resource officer position and adding a second detective is what I've been asked, or what I've heard discussed since I've got here, which is providing a very high level of service for this community, and being able to take this department, to provide a level of service that that is to be emulated by other cities our size. So when we talk about that and we talk about our goals and where we need to be, I think these positions are extremely important for us to be able to provide the level of service that our communities come to expect and that they want to see from their police department.
As I said, this is a policy discussion for the city council to have outside of the budget process. And this is really the beginning of the conversation. Earlier tonight, you were talking about a town hall meeting, maybe part of a discussion at a town hall meeting that now what's the future of the police department in the city, and try to get feedback from citizens. But if council is amenable, the chief and I'll come back and continue this conversation with you at a future meeting.
Yeah, we'll listen to more discussion on it. And I do like the idea of getting input from the community. Counselor Settlemeyer.
I'm sorry, I guess I'm not real clear. Is this part of our proposed budget this year?
No, it's absolutely not. As I said, this is a policy decision separate from the budget to be had by the city council. Part of the reason I'm introducing it to you this evening is to make it clear that it is not part of the budget discussion.
All right. Thank you.
And that would conclude my report, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Sauerwein. All right. Business from the city attorney.
Okay, let's see where we're, oh, plenty of time. Not that I have very much to say. Thank you so much for letting me tune in. The only comment I was going to make was that which Councillor Lammerman mentioned earlier, which is the chronic nuisance ordinance. It's drafted. It went to the municipal judge, Judge Fisher. We have some comments back that really should be evaluated by someone who's familiar with court and litigation. So I'm waiting for that input from my local government law group litigator who is in trial, who is needing to finish being in trial until he takes a look at Judge Fisher's comments. You, as you can tell by the time, had a really full agenda for this evening as it was. And so we thought that this worked out pretty well to put the chronic nuisance ordinance on the agenda for the council's first meeting in June. Is that correct, Mike? Mr. Sauerwein? Okay. So that's all. It's coming. It's there. We want you to be able to see it in pretty much final form with everybody's comments incorporated.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. All right. Items removed from the consent agenda. I see none. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks so much.